Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode number 2 in our series called Planning Ahead. And this video, we are going to be talking about real estate, in particular, the impact that COVID has had on real estate. We can very easily open up our news feeds, social media, and all those places and see that this virus has had economic effects, it's had personal effects, it's had many changes throughout our culture and society, and real estate is definitely one of those areas where we've seen challenges and changes. So with us today is a special friend, guest, and professional in the area. She is Stacy Delisle. She's the Director of Community Outreach and a Realtor at Caris Realty. And she is nodding, so that means I pronounced it correctly, which is very good information, or at least close enough to be acceptable. So welcome, Stacy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into my screen, share a little bit of information, then we'll come back and we'll do some Q&A on real estate. But I want to set a stage for sort of the bird's eye view, the 360 view, or the down look on the economic situation very briefly, and then we'll dig into real estate, in particular local real estate, Maryland, and as granular as Frederick County, even in talking about those impacts, and then talking about how we can help people if they have issues as it relates to their real estate situation. So give me a moment here to share. Okay, so when looking at the economic picture, it doesn't take a Nobel laureate to know that the economic picture feels a little bleak right now. So here's a couple fairly dramatic charts kind of supporting that perspective, if you will. So this is total vehicles sold here in the upper left-hand corner, and you can see a very strong pullback. Not a lot of people buying cars right now. This is the ISM non-manufacturing PMI reading. So if the chart is moving up, it is suggesting expansion. And if it is going sideways, it's kind of in that normal choppy range. That's actually fairly normal to have it trending that way. But if it's really pulling down, it's suggesting contraction in the economy. And then lower left, we have jobless claims, obviously spiking. And then lower right is United States manufacturing payrolls. So just to sort of help, if it wasn't incredibly clear before, these orange arrows help paint the picture that we're in a rather unique situation, economically speaking. The stress of the virus plus the response from a official standpoint, whether it be a mayor, a governor, a president, whatever, each level in each state. It's kind of been an excellent example of our republic and how it operates. But each place across the country, just as we've seen in the United States and Maryland, and then in our local Frederick County, has had different sets of rules and different ways that you can shop, or that you can transact business, and that you can operate your businesses. And that's had a profound effect, one like we haven't seen in my professional life and in most of our lifetimes, where by rule of edict, I don't necessarily want to say by rule of law, because everything that's been asked of us necessarily hasn't gone through a legislative process, but by the power of suggestion, we've been told we can't do certain things and that we can do others, and it's had a dramatic impact on things economically. Another chart, another view here of the ADP unemployment change. Again, very dramatic, and that was the point of just sort of sharing these hockey stick charts, where they're flat and then boom, you get a powerful move in one direction or the other. We're not in a normal circumstance. So how has that really been impacting us? And locally, we can see that Maryland, we know that there's been an unemployment issue here in Maryland. I don't want to say an issue, but an unemployment response to the virus and to the circumstances. Some recent data as of 5/9, at least maybe we're getting to the beginning of some hooking back up of these charts, or some positive in these charts, at least in that the layoffs are slowing down. So layoffs decreased in the state by 30% compared to the previous week as of 5/9. That's some good information. It's still not where we need to be and where we want to be, but hopefully we're starting to see some recovery fall into line and being realized in Maryland as we move from phase 1, phase 2, and the different phases as they're being shared with us. And before we start talking specifically about real estate, I do want to touch on mortgage applications and interest rates. just to, again, add some context to this. So as we can see, mortgage applications really exploded in early March, kind of pulled back a little bit. And if you were going to refi in March, you did it early, apparently, because there was a huge spike and then it pulled back. And now we're sort of back into that normal trend of mortgage applications and also rates. If you are still interested in refinancing, there's still a great opportunity, as the 30-year note is right around 3.37% as of this morning. So rates obviously still attractive. And we're in a situation here where when we start talking about transacting real estate, Stacy, what are some of the things that have been maybe surprising or that you thought were a little bit different from the news cycle and all the fear and whether justified or not into that necessarily, but just the reaction, shutting schools down, everything kind of grinding to a halt. What have you seen in real estate?
Sure. That's a really good question. So a lot of the people in my industry have kind of been joking. Even the folks that have been around and doing this for a while have said, even if you've been a realtor for 20 years, no one's been a COVID realtor.
That's a good point.
And I guess, what's really meant by that is COVID has really touched kind of all areas of our lives. It's touched the economy, it's touched health, it's affected families that we know. It could have even affected our own family.
Yeah.
So I think part of what we're seeing in the real estate world is we're seeing folks being a little more cautious. So, folks who maybe have not had to move, who are just thinking about a move, we're not really seeing a lot of that right now. And we really haven't been in this spring season. So while we've seen trends kind of mimic trends in years past, the numbers have been a little bit lower in terms of volume.
Okay.
So that's one difference that we've seen. Another difference has been just some added layers of protection for the transactions themselves. So there's some addenda that the Maryland Association of Realtors has added, both with listing agreements as well as with the contracts themselves, just to provide for extra precautions should anything COVID related from a health standpoint come into effect. And then obviously COVID has affected our ability in terms of showing and marketing property in person. So we've seen a lot of folks reverting to a higher use of video, more virtual open houses and virtual tours, where people are either doing that first prior to going to viewing a property in person, or even making an offer on a property sight unseen but having toured it virtually. So we've seen a little bit of that as well. So just as the information has kind of come out over the past couple of months, the local realtor boards as well as the state realtor board has just really been kind of pivoting as quickly as possible with the new information in order to really strike a balance between keeping people safe, but also affording people who really need to do the business of real estate to continue doing that.
So with the transactions that are going sight unseen, is there, have you seen anything different or maybe heightened communication between the appraisers and the home inspectors and those individuals that are on that sort of sight unseen situation? How's that kind of going?
Yes, definitely a lot of communication, as you can imagine. So again, sight unseen, not there personally, but for example, with home inspections, the clients are being FaceTimed through during
okay.
And they're having the opportunity to still visit that way. So we're definitely seeing that. There's also, again, obviously with a sight unseen property, when offers are made, there's additional paperwork, to provide in those circumstances as well, just to make sure that everybody is all on the same page and everybody's clear on, the process and what's happening. But I think just all around, your point about communication is great, whether it's a sight unseen property or not. Just this whole kind of new normal for now in real estate, because of the impact of COVID, has definitely increased communication between the parties involved, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Things have thankfully kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of the new information coming out that's COVID related, but especially in the beginning, just lots of constant communication to make sure that clients were well supported, that the professionals involved in the transactions really understood what was going on, and everyone was, again, just on the same page and clear, and making sure that their clients' best interests were served.
Excellent. So when it comes to the types of buyers, I've heard that there may be some discrepancies between first-time buyers and investors in the last few months. What have you seen in those regards?
Sure. So I think, for investors, they've pulled back a bit. For folks who you're not looking at a primary residence, you're thinking about investing in the real estate market, it has gotten a little bit volatile and a little bit wonky. And so I think there's just been the perception that maybe this isn't the best time to maybe wait out and see sort of what happens when the dust settles with COVID. So we have seen a pullback in investor purchasing. First-time home buyers, though, still have access to not only low interest rates, but a lot of other state funding that's available through programs such as the Maryland Mortgage Program and so forth. So there's still amazing resources out there for first-time home buyers. And with the rates being as low as they are, it's really positioned them well in order to take advantage of the market right now.
So if you were wanting to get into into whether you're on the buying side or the selling side, what can you expect as a consumer right now with regard to settlement times, with regard to maybe just the length of the process, documenting your income and assets, things of that nature? You may have done 10 or 12 transactions in your lifetime. Maybe you're an Army brat and this is just the way life has been for you or your parents. What should a person be prepared for when entering into this process today?
Sure. Great questions. So obviously lenders are being extremely careful. They are requiring all the same things that they have in the past, just some of the verifications and such as verification of employment. That's happening right now a lot closer to the time of settlement. Whereas, the lenders may have verified that a few days prior. We're seeing lenders now even verify employment the morning of settlement.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you want your settlement at like 8:30 in the morning if you think anything could be changing. Schedule it early. Top tip.
Yes. So, I've actually heard stories of people having to push back settlement a couple of hours so that the lender could get in touch with their employer and verify employment that morning. So we're definitely seeing, just some tightening there in terms of the lending side. In terms of the length for the transaction, things are taking a little bit longer. Conventional purchases are still closing in about 30 days or so, but your mortgage, your government-backed mortgages such as VA, FHA, USDA, those turn times are taking a little bit longer. So we're more in the 35 to 45 day range on those.
Okay.
Significant hiccups. So turn times haven't gotten extraordinarily slow, but we are seeing a little bit of a lag in some of that.
And that makes sense. That makes sense. So for individuals who are in a situation where maybe they may have already lost their job, or they may be furloughed, or they may know it's coming. There's been a lot of talk about forbearance and about adjustments. There's been the CARES Act, which has created some provisions in the states of emergencies, all of these things. There's a lot of moving parts. And if you're going through one of the most stressful things a person can, well, number one, you're already in lockdown. Right. Number two, you have depending on your science, the next person who breathes on you could infect you with a life-ending virus. And I don't mean to sensationalize that. It's just that could be a reality for somebody. And your income, a job you may have loved, or it's either on pause or it's ended completely. And now you're faced with a situation of adjusting to a new reality with your housing. Let's start with sort of the differences between forbearance and deferment. Is there anything that you would want to share in sort of just a broad brush view in those differences?
Sure. So a deferment is more of just a general pause on the mortgage process. A forbearance, on a forbearance, it really is best used as a last resort. It's something that will definitely affect your credit. It is something that it's slow, it quote maybe slows the bleed a little bit, but isn't a really sound solution to the problem. So I think for people finding themselves in a situation like you just described, really the best thing to do is to just call your lender and speak to the person who is servicing your loan and try to have just open communication with them about what options are available. Not all lenders handle this the same way, and finding out what options are available specifically with the company that's servicing your mortgage is a really, really good place to start. And if there is any way to continue to pay your mortgage through this, that is definitely your best option, just to keep things trucking along.
Yeah. This is your point on forbearance and deferment. There's such a wide range of outcomes you could get, whether it's a auto loan, a credit card, or a mortgage payment. And in speaking with clients on my side, I've seen everything from very, very favorable terms, many months of deferment with just, hey, it's going to be paused, and then we're adding those payments and the interest to the end of your loan, but you are given this window, this grace period, where you can either find new employment or make other arrangements. Maybe you need to sell and rent for a season, or you know that your work will come back once we open back up, if you're maybe on the service side. And a lot of work that is done shoulder to shoulder has been under fire in this situation. But really, I echo and agree with you completely. You really have to look at the actual, it's not sort of a general definition of forbearance. It's whatever that lender, whatever their situation is, whatever their contingencies are, whatever their rules are, those are the rules you're going to have to play by. And if coming up with $2,000 today is tough, coming up with $8,000 in 3 months is not necessarily going to be any easier, but it could buy you the time you need to make a pivot on your property. Mm-hmm. And in that case, with regard to, but we'll talk about that in a second. I had a little idea on that. Let's talk a little bit about renters. If you're renting right now, and you're in the exact same circumstance, what could that person be expecting as far as the communication with their landlord? And then are there any protections afforded them right now as well?
Sure. So again, same rules apply. If you are able to make your rent payments, that's absolutely, the best thing for you to do. While we're in the state of emergency, it's my understanding in speaking with my broker that renters are not able to be evicted right now. But that doesn't then that once the state of emergency is lifted, that their landlord won't come and ask them for all of their rent that's currently due and back due. So much like a mortgage forbearance, where at the end of that period, there are certain monies that are due. And much to your example, $2,000 now or $8,000 later, the same kind of idea applies in a rental situation. And so, again, if you're able to continue making those rent payments, that's absolutely the best thing that you can do. But if folks really are in a position that they just can't, then right now during the state of emergency, they are not able to be evicted.
Okay. So when we look forward, there's going to be lingering effects of this lockdown, even as we see other industries coming online, new businesses. State of Maryland, just like yesterday or the day before, has come out with sort of more liberal guidance on who can be open. I think hairdressers now have the ability to conduct business. Mm-hmm. I think gyms and martial arts studios, things like that, I think still cannot. So there's you really have to stay so dialed in to what the recent events are, what the recent decisions have been to be aware of this. But even beyond that, there are implications for the values of real estate going forward. And there seems to be, I'm hearing a very wide range of prognostications, if you will. I'm not a big believer in projections, and the further out you project, you really just have to define your variables. Financial planning, we project out 30 years, 40 years all the time, but we're very careful and clear about, okay, we have to assume an interest rate, we have to assume a rate of return, we have to assume inflation, you have to assume health. You have all these assumptions that you have to define. There was a CoreLogic result that came out, or prediction that came out the other day, saying, hey, real estate is being expected to pull back like 1.4%, 1.5% a year from now. And that's a national number. With regard specifically to Frederick County, at least in the last 90 days, what have prices really looked like? What is the sort of the tone been? Are there still multiple offers coming in? Are the buyers really serious? Are the sellers more or less testing the water? Sort of what are you seeing? And is there any way we can extrapolate sort of the stability of this market locally from what you've been seeing in Frederick County or Urbana or Central Maryland?
Mm-hmm. So I pulled some stats for us.
Oh, great.
In Frederick County, currently there are 715 active and coming soon properties in the entire county. As of yesterday, when I pulled that, there are 948 that are closing in the next 45 days. So we're going to see more going off the market in those 45 days than are currently on the market right now. The median days on market for listings is only 12 days. So we're still move pretty quickly. And then last year, in the same time frame, we saw 658 close, and the median days on market was 17. So what we're actually seeing in Frederick County is a really healthy market. We're seeing properties that are being sold. We're seeing buyers who are serious, and we're seeing an average days on market that's under 2 weeks. So things are moving along. In Montgomery County, they are at 1,613 currently active and in coming soon status in the MLS. They have 1,525 that are closing in the next 45 days. Their median days on market is 16, so only slightly higher than Frederick.
Wow.
And they had 2,004 closed in the same time frame last year.
So that time frame, that 12 days and that 16 days, that's basically from sign in the ground to ratified contract.
Yes, that is day one on market to ratified contract. That's correct.
That seems quick. And to your point, if you're a serious buyer right now, I guess there's no mucking about. It's you're not looking at and you're not really walking through and driving around 17 properties. That virtual process could be speeding up this a little bit as well.
Yes. And I think that people in my role are definitely taking the online marketing piece, up a few notches, knowing that buyers are maybe feeling a little bit apprehensive about going out and looking in person. And so by the time they do set foot in a property, they are pretty serious. They've ruled a lot in or a lot out online already, and are really going to see the homes that they truly believe could be a really good fit for them.
That's really, that's interesting. I think that's going to be sticky. I don't think that's going to necessarily diminish if you're like me, you find yourself getting into maybe uncomfortably long conversations with the Amazon delivery person just because it's a human being that you can talk to, and they're so gracious and patient as you're like, hey, how you doing? We've never met, but man, your truck's really clean. And so that desire for interaction and that desire to talk and to touch and press flesh and do all those things that we're so used to doing, I think there will still be some of that as we go. But to your point of narrowing the list, really culling the herd of saying, okay, there's 1,000 properties that are in our price range and in our area, but here's the 4, and you can knock that out fairly quickly. And I think that's much like we're seeing the changes in education and in work. Those are going to be some of the positive byproducts we are likely to see in real estate as we move forward. Excellent. So any other observations that we haven't touched on, or that I hadn't thought to ask, that a buyer or seller would need to be aware of or would help? Or is it just a function of saying, hey, we've seen all these massive changes, but at the end of the day, there's just a core underlying set of principles, and you could either speak to sort of the core or additional changes that you've thought?
Sure. So I think, when it comes to real estate, even COVID, real estate, the same basic principles still apply. It's just a matter of taking the things that we know are best practices, as a seller or as a buyer, and pivoting a little bit and figuring out what it looks like in the context of a nation and a world that's being affected by this pandemic. So, homes where sellers have really taken the time to prep their home well, they've made necessary, small repairs and updates and, things just to really prepare it for the market, just
Mhm.
like they ordinarily would. That's still working. You know, homes that are photographed well, that has always worked. And, you know, as I said just a few minutes ago, kind of then taking that online marketing up a notch through virtual tours, you know, videography, something called Matterport, where you can
Mm.
have like a 3D walking tour of the property. You know, all of that is super important. And then on the buyer side, knowing how quickly the market is moving right now, same principles really apply, but I just can't emphasize enough how important it is before you actually set foot in a property to have already spoken to a lender and have a pre-approval and to really know where your budget is. I mean, that's always important, but especially now when things are moving so quickly, it may be a matter of if this is something that you want to go for, we need to write an offer today. You don't have the time to backtrack and, you know, run credit and send in W-2s and all of those things that would be done ordinarily on the front end. So again, same principles, just pivoted a little bit and just, I guess I would just say even more important. You know, if they're important before, they're even more important now because of, again, just the pace at which the market is moving due to the low inventory and the really just stellar rates that we're seeing right now.
It seems to really reflect kind of how we respond personally in a time of crisis. If you're a super optimistic and positive person and you're under tremendous stress, you may become more emboldened and positive. And if you're super pessimistic, you might, it might drag you down even further. And so whatever was great to do before in a real estate transaction, man, it's even better to do now and do a better job and really be buttoned up when going in under this environment and in this situation. That's an excellent point, Stacy. Thank you.
You're welcome. There's too many extra variables right now. And so, you know, the basics, like we can't let the basics be the variables. Like those things need to really be, like you said, buttoned up because of all the other curveballs we're being thrown. So.
Excellent. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, Stacy, what would be the best ways to reach out and get and contact you directly?
Sure. I would love for people if they wanted to reach out and just chat more. You can reach me on Facebook, Stacy Delisle Realtor.
You're a beast on Facebook, by the way. So
thank you.
They'll enjoy the visit, whatever they're looking for.
Well, either your homes or you're going to learn all about ice cream in Maryland because our family.
That's right. That's right.
Ice cream. If you'd like to email me, you can email me at Stacy, STACY, Delisle, DELISLE @gmail.com. And you're always welcome to call or text, and that number is 301-646-9625.
Awesome. Well, Stacy, it has been a really treat and a pleasure to have you on. Maybe sometime in the future we can redo this, and hopefully we're talking about a whole different world from an economic standpoint and from a health standpoint. But to have you on today has really been very helpful, and I just want to say thank you, and we look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, take care.